It's great to have you here on the Clark Howard Show, where our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. So coming straight ahead, we have Clark Stinks, my favorite segment of the week. And then later, I want to talk about something I did on television where I asked people randomly on the streets about their savings for retirement, 401ks, and things like that. And wow, did I learn a lot from the people I talked to doing that story that is so important to share with you. But right now, we got to talk Clark Stinks, where you help me out, where you feel the advice I gave, the answer I may have given was off base, incomplete, or just plain dumb.
I should have never encouraged you to speak.
You must think I'm pretty stupid.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe you're right, pal.
I love you not. This is Clark's relationship with self-checkout. First, Clark tells us not to use self-checkout because if we make a mistake, we'll be prosecuted for stealing. Next thing we know, Clark thinks self-checkout is the best thing ever because there's time to verify that the price on the screen is the price on the shelf. So which is it? Is self-checkout a cautionary tale or the new best way to save money? Nathaniel,
it is both. And that was a mixed message I gave about people being prosecuted. That was what the most stories about that were involving Walmart, where you may have misscanned something. I mean, they have a problem with people that are professional thieves or organized crime rings that will have fake barcodes and all that stuff. But it's when a retailer goes after someone who just didn't realize something scanned right or whatever and walks out the door, starts to walk out the door with something they didn't pay for, where an overzealous retailer overreacts to it and doesn't use good common sense and judgment. At the same time, the pricing errors in stores are so legendary. That's why I love self-checkout, because I'm able to scan at my pace, check each price, put the item over, and it's the best service in the world myself. But what I really love is the Sam's Club Scan and Go. It's so incredible. And what Uniqlo does as well with the painless instant checkout much quicker than a human could do it.
Okay, so this one is a little outdated because you also picked on me this week for something similar. Clark stinks because he picked on Christa for buying bottled water and making her feel uncomfortable. Stop shaming her and allow Christa to buy whatever she'd like. She doesn't get on your case for needlessly traveling several times a week. Charles.
Charles, here's my water. For those of you on the YouTube show, you can see it. And Christa, you want to describe my water?
You have a big metal. I actually have my metal water bottle with me as well.
See, this is the smart way to do it.
So you're still picking on me, as this person thinks. He's not picking on me, by the way. It's all in jest. I don't care.
Christa and I pick on each other like brother and sister.
Uh-huh.
And we always have. And so she doesn't pick on me during the podcast or YouTube show because people are really harsh on her if she says something needling me. So she's usually...
I do it off the air.
Yeah, exactly.
Clark, you don't really smell badly, but there's a whiff of forget-me-nots in the air. When you mentioned your credit card list of what you keep in your wallet, you left out Diners Club. I thought I remember you talking about having a Diners Club card in the past. Unless I'm mistaken, what happened to your precious Diners Club card, Jeff?
So Diners Club, the portfolio was sold to a Canadian company, and I think they still own it. And the benefits shriveled to being a tiny fraction of what they used to be. And so what did I do? I canceled the card. I had enough cards that I wasn't worried about it hurting my ratios or my credit history And so I canned the Diners Club card. I used all the points, though, before I canceled the card.
Betcha. Clark, you stink like an untethered bank, pushing credit card rates higher and higher. You have mentioned more than once that a credit union card should have a lower rate than bank cards. I found that interesting, so I looked at the 4 cards I have. 3 banks and a credit union card. I found my credit union's rate was higher than any of the others. I called the number on the back of the card and asked for a lower rate. They were happy to lower it by 5 points, but only for 6 months as it was a promotion. I relayed what you said about credit union cards as they should be lower as a feature of being a credit union member. She said, "First I heard of it." Anyway, remind your listeners that if they call their card issuer, they may get a lower rate. Bob.
Bob, thank you. All right, so credit unions versus banks. You're playing the numbers game. And there was a study that was pretty comprehensive that we gave the results of. We didn't do it, but it was done third party earlier this year, that found that the average credit card interest rate from a credit union was a little less than half, or the savings were a little less than half of what the average interest rate was on a bank-issued credit card. But there are hundreds, if not thousands, of credit unions, thousands of banks, and not every credit union is going to offer a better deal than a bank. Not every credit union is going to have the mentality that it's owned by its members, and therefore we must serve our members well. But as a general rule, those two things are true.
Clark continues to stink on his advice regarding not providing Social Security numbers to medical providers.
How many posts have you had on this?
Oh my.
Yeah.
While data theft is indeed a problem, it's not true that hospitals and healthcare systems don't care about information security. Many have quite large and expensive information security teams, but the pure number of such places, plus the intrinsic challenge of information security, means there are going to be these issues. Furthermore, healthcare providers need your social for more than just collecting debt. Electronic medical records and prescription safety databases are often keyed to your Social Security number and allow other providers to have a full picture of the treatment you've had, even from other places. This could be very important in an emergency where you can't provide this info yourself, and information about your past medical care and medications could influence emergency treatment you're receiving. People should freeze their credit and then provide their social when requested for a valid reason, and medical providers is one of those, in my view. Peter.
Peter, thank you, and I'm so glad you explained it the way you did. And I want you to think about something. Years and years ago, Congress, because of all the problems with data breaches and medical centers and the rest, forced private health insurers to go to medical record numbers that were different than Social Security numbers. And Congress did this as a way to prevent this problem going on in the medical industry. Well, what Congress did not realize at the time, I'm talking about Congress like a blob, is how often employers will change who the health insurance provider is and how often people change jobs, and there will be a different medical provider. And so I don't have an answer to this. I just know how dangerous it is, because with half of all data breaches being in medical facilities or from medical providers, it is a big, juicy target for criminals to go after the information available there. And if somebody's Social Security number is not on file, that record is not of use to them. The Social Security number is key and central to criminals being able to create havoc and mischief in your life.
Clark, you stink like my trash can after cleaning out old leftovers. Seriously, I'm surprised you're advocating for deregulating the energy sector, as you mentioned on an earlier segment. As an engineer in the industry, I actually support breaking up monopolies where appropriate. It makes sense to encourage competition, but breaking up monopolies and deregulation are two very different things. Deregulation of large profit-driven corporations often leads to negative outcomes. Trains derailing, forest fires from transmission lines falling after companies fail to maintain their hardware, and corners being cut to save money. Regulations keep your power on, ensure your drinking water stays clean, and are essential for public safety. They also keep utility rates in check as state boards regulate what companies can charge. Without those guardrails, companies would have free rein to gouge customers even more. What you left out when talking about deregulating in the 1970s is that it led to more mergers, less access to rail and power in rural areas, and sacrificing long-term reliability for short-term gains. People's wallets got hurt more than they benefited as a result. Jobs were cut, quality got worse, and people just flat out lost while corporations thrived. We need regulations as much as we need to challenge monopolies to ensure accountability and protect the public. Logan.
Logan, thank you. And I realize I hit a real hot button with you. And this is something I have a complete blind loyalty to, and that is the wonder and beauty of the free market. I am a big advocate for health and safety regulations. I think they are necessary to ensure that capitalism left completely to its own devices will cut corners on health and safety. There is no, and environment, no doubt of that at all. As far as antitrust laws being enforced to prevent remonopolization of an industry, absolutely we should have that. But a marketplace, it is my belief, functions better when it is free market. One thing you don't mention is in so many states, the power companies, the monopoly power companies, have captured the political process to great harm to ratepayers buying electricity and potentially natural gas within that state because of the extreme political power and the corruption of money going to politicians in that state. And when you look at what's happened with power rates in states that are monopoly controlled in its political process, those rates have gone up, up, up and away. And where the market is competitive, those rates have gone much lower than they are in the regulated states. It is just a strong belief I have in trusting the wisdom of the free market and free enterprise. I just believe in it so much. And yes, there are times I miss, with my blinders on, I miss possible negative consequences. It's just an obsession of mine having free markets.
Clark Stinks pointed out to Clark that there are IRS regulations that determine whether a person is an employee or an independent contractor, and that the parties can't just select one based on what will save the most tax. Clark said he wouldn't worry about that because it's very unlikely a small business will be audited for that issue. How far does Clark go with his philosophy that you don't need to follow the law if it's unlikely you will get caught? Is Clark in Costco and just sees there are no employees or cameras around? Does he just slip the AIM toothpaste into his pocket? Harry,
thank you. The dilemma that's gone on with lawsuits, legislation, court fights about who's an employee, who's an independent contractor. Just think about the fights that have gone on around the country about whether Uber and Lyft drivers are independent contractors or employees. This is one of the hardest parts of the economy, and that's why something that was suggested by an economist about 5 or 6 years ago is something that I have been really in favor of, is us having a third classification that really fits something like Uber and Lyft, and that's a dependent contractor. That you have something in between these two polar opposites of somebody who's an employee, somebody who's an independent contractor. The distinction of a dependent contractor is that, let's say I'm driving for Uber, and Uber now has 75% market share. Lyft has become somewhat irrelevant in most major markets. So I am completely dependent on how Uber sets down policies, what they choose to pay me, all the rest. And maybe you're not truly an employee. but you're also not truly an independent contractor. And that's the idea of this middle ground of dependent contractor.
But you don't believe in breaking the law.
I don't believe in breaking the law for sure. I pay my taxes as I'm supposed to. And whenever there's a question, I pay more because I can never cut a corner because it's just not what I should do.
Clark, in a time of record housing unaffordability, you can spare us the lecture on 15-year mortgages. While obviously true that a 15-year mortgage has benefits over the 30-year, it's especially tone-deaf and irrelevant to point that out in today's market, which has all but ground to a halt, with home prices having outpaced wage growth so dramatically in recent years. Read the room, Clark. If no one can afford to take your advice, then your advice stinks. Chad.
Chad, thank you very much. All right, so Chad, what I've said about that is dovetails with what you've said, that for most people, when I talk about the 15-year loan, it's an irrelevant choice because the payments are already so high, and you'd be looking at a payment roughly 20% higher per month. But who I'm focusing on with that are people who are already in a home loan with a higher rate. They've been able to afford the payments. They've been paying them over time. And now the 15-year loan is in the 5-point-something% range, depending on the day. Somewhere, it's in the fives. That the interest rate drop may be enough that somebody's able to afford going out of a 7-point-something loan to a 5-point-something loan and have that 15-year pay period instead of the 20-year with the 30-year with the 2-point lower interest rate. They may be able to afford it. That's the context, and I don't give that context every time, but your point is completely valid. People are wheezing trying to afford that higher payment every month. Coming up ahead, I'm going to talk about something that really excited me and distressed me at the same time. In TV, I do a lot of what's known as MOS, called Man on the Street, where you go out and you stick a mic in people's face with a camera and you say, hey, what about this, that, or the other? And you get their react. I got to tell you what I learned about people with saving for retirement. For the TV stations that air me every February, May, and November, I do what we call specials in television because those are ratings periods where ad rates are set for ad agencies and time buyers buying TV ad time. And so I do a lot more what we call specials, which are longer form kind of series about something with your wallet. And I did one for the November book that I wanted to share with you. I went to a walking trail, where it's a pretty crowded walking trail, and would just go up to people and start asking them about what they're doing to save for retirement. And it's really interesting because one thing I'll tell you I've noticed, because I've been in television now for 34 years, is that people are much less camera shy than they used to be. Just an aside, that I think people have been shooting videos of themselves and others for so many years now because of smartphones that people don't shy from a camera at all. And there was a trend that was fantastic. I noticed especially with people in their 20s and early 30s that to a person, they know what Roth IRAs are. And overwhelmingly, at least from the day that I was doing these interviews, they have a Roth IRA. And they get that. And they know that money's money they're going to put aside. It's never going to be taxed. It's going to be money that's there for them later. But where I found the train wreck with people was with 401ks. Because I'd ask people, well, do you contribute to your 401k at work? And they'd say, yeah. And I'd say, how much are you contributing? I don't know. Or they'd say, oh, I'm contributing what I have to for a match. That's a better answer. I'd say, what are you invested in? Overwhelmingly, I don't know. And then the ultimate payoff question was, how many jobs have you had over the last, depending on their age, I'd ask 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And people would tell me, because people change jobs a lot more now than people used to. And I'd ask, so what'd you do with the 401k you had last job or the job before? And people got lost in thought. And I mean, it was overwhelming. I can't think of a single person who really had a solid answer to what they did with their old 401k. And so I realized that it's pretty clear to people, the Roth thing, the Roth IRA thing. Oh, the other question I asked, are you in the traditional 401k or are you in the Roth 401k? Okay, get this. Not a single person that I can recall, not a single person could answer that question. So there's this clear divide that Roth IRAs are pretty simple. You open one, you can fund them up to $7,000 a year unless you're older, and you put the money in or you don't. And it was interesting with those, there was a similar thing to the 401ks. People didn't know in most cases what their money was invested in the Roth IRA. If you're listening to this podcast, you're mouthing to me, well, what about target retirement fund? And so people kept asking me, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm not a financial advisor, but I recommend as a default that you go in a target retirement fund, explain what that is, for the year closest to when you're going to retire. But where I realized the problem, as clear as could be, is the 401k. That if you have friends, you got kids that are young adults, take the time to educate them if they don't know, and it's appropriate, about whether they should be in a traditional or Roth. Because remember, not a single person could answer that question to me. Not one. Second, that people need to know that the more they contribute, particularly when they're young, the better things are going to be for them down the road. And if all else fails, go target retirement fund choice in the plan. If you don't know how to allocate what to invest in. And then when you change jobs, I didn't say if, when you change jobs, the decision tree you can make, it was clear to me, nobody knows that you can move the money to a new employer's 401k, you can move the money to your own IRA, and there are even circumstances where it might make sense to leave it in the plan you're in. But you got to know, and you got to act on those choices, because the employers offer these plans, but they don't explain them. And they don't explain at all in English what happens after you've left a job. They send you something that some lawyer who never learned real English writes this thing that your employee has no idea what it means. And so we have to educate ourselves. And we got to know these choices ourselves. And I realized I got a lot more to do in what I do on TV so people do understand these things and understand these choices.
Okay, David in Oregon says, my wife and I have a problem we need help figuring out. We bought property in December of 2023 with hopes to build our dream home. We've spent all of 2024 working with a builder and architect with the plans for the home and are close to breaking ground with an expected move-in date of December of 2025. The problem we've encountered is we cannot obtain insurance for the home. builder's risk, or home insurance ownership policies. We've been declined coverage by over 30-plus insurers due to more stringent fire standards in the area. As you're aware, insurance companies are scrutinizing individual properties using satellite imagery and AI, and even though we have a defensible fire strategy in place and a fire hydrant on our property, we still can't find coverage. Not sure what to do, wait for the insurance industry to possibly loosen up standards in the next year, or cut bait and sell our dream property.
Aw.
The property cost was $650,000. As a side note, Taylor Swift doesn't hold a candle to you and Christa. Go Falcons.
My Falcons actually look good so far. So David, something really significant. Say again where David's from.
Oregon.
All right. So what's significant about California, Oregon? Don't know about Washington State, but I've read about this in both. Both now offer, like Florida does, insurer of last resort that is provided by the state. Now, I don't know that they offer builder's risk as a state-provided thing, but Oregon offers, you have to show you've been declined by 2 insurers, I think is what it usually is, for private sector insurance to then go under the taxpayer-backed insurer of last resort. So I don't know how you handle the construction phase, but the home ownership phase, Oregon does have your back. Now, it's not a panacea with these state-issued policies because the coverages usually won't be as good as with private insurers, and it's possible the premiums will be somewhat higher than what the free market would have provided, but I don't want you to give up on your dream of home ownership. And the states have had to do this because think of what would happen to homeowners who are in a home that they own already and it becomes uninsurable. The value of that home collapses. And that's why the states do step in as insurer of last resort.
M in Colorado says, Clark, I know what you're going to say, so I'm going to say it first. Thank you and the whole Clark crew for your service. Seriously, my question is this. It looks like active duty military types will be able to have HCFSAs in March of 2025. I don't know if this is for the first time ever or if I've just not been paying attention. How does one use this to their financial and health advantage? Is this like a Roth or traditional IRA in terms of taxes? Here's what I found, but I'm confused just the same. And frankly, I need your analysis before I move out onto the next step. And there's a link there for you.
Okay. So, Em, let me tell you how this plays.
And what is this?
This is a flexible spending account. It's a military version of a flexible spending account. And it's a little more favorable than most private sector ones, and that there's an amount of money that I don't remember the dollar amount that can be moved forward into the next year through the year if you don't spend it all in the first year. So let me explain the basics of a flexible spending account. You're able to take a certain amount of money for a single individual or family and put it into a pre-tax account, so the money will not be taxed up front. And then for eligible medical expenses, you're able to pay those expenses with that pre-tax money instead of your after-tax money. You don't want to overestimate what your medical expenses that you have to pay out of pocket will likely be in 25, because if you do, you've got that amount you can carry forward. The rest of it, you forfeit if you don't use it. So this is a partial use it or lose it scenario because there is this partial carry forward. So you put money aside, and then if you got a copay or whatever, you pay it from this, and your money goes further because you're paying with pre-tax dollars instead of money that's already been taxed.
And thank you for your service.
Thank you, yes. And thank you for the compliments about us. I'm not generally good about taking compliments. I mean, my wife tries to get me, Lane tries to get me to just be, thank you very much. But I get embarrassed by compliments. It's just part of my personality.
It's because you're such a good person.
I don't know about that.
You're supposed to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. See, I just am so wired that way. And again, I want to emphasize, thank you for your service.
Scott in Nevada says, we're planning to retire in the next year. We have several credit cards, which we always pay off. Occasionally, we have signed up for a new travel-related card to receive some generous bonus points or miles. While we don't need any more cards, will it be hard to get a new card after we retire? Our income will be modest, although we have no debt and enough savings to be fine. We're just wondering if we should sign up for 1 or 2 extra cards while we can, since we may want to cancel some that we have now.
Yes. Yes, and this bears repeating, and I'm glad you brought this question up because this came up, 6 or 8 months ago with someone who retired with quite a bit of assets, and they couldn't get a card again. The way credit card companies base things, they don't know what assets you have, and they ask you for your income. You don't want to lie about that income. And so it's important that you, before you retire, you think through your strategies. Hey, I'd really like to have this reward card, or I'd like to have this cashback card, or whatever. And get them before you retire, because once you retire, they may, like in this situation, lots of money saved, no debt, but at the same time facing a much lower ongoing reportable income in retirement. That's why you get the cards before you retire. And I want to thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast. And I hope that your weekend ahead is absolutely wonderful. And know all weekend long, we're here to serve you at Clark.com and ClarkDeals.com. And here we are, the kickoff weekend of the really good November Black Friday sales month is underway, and the Clark Deals team is amped up. They are ready to go, staffed up as well, extra work shifts and all the rest, to post for you on Clark Deals the best bona fide deals for your wallet. We're not going to waste your time with deals that are non-deal deals. And so we're going to help you through this Christmas season. Make sure you get the most value for your dollar each and every day, each and every gift that you buy for someone else, or you indulge in buying a gift for yourself. And enjoy that weekend and do more. Saving more, that doesn't work. Let's say save more, spend less, and avoid getting ripped off. See you Monday.